situation again. So Bill Belichick, I don't think will coach the Patriots next year. Bill Belichick, I believe, will have options though next season, and I don't think he'll be desperate enough to just take any job that's available. Why am I mentioning this now? Because I'm already tired of the one-day-old conversation about Bill Belichick potentially going to the Carolina Panthers. Bill Belichick is not going to the Carolina Panthers. Why? The Carolina Panthers is a horrific job opening. Who am I hearing talk about this? Everybody. Mike Giardi, really, really well-noted NFL insider, well-noted Patriots insider. He sat on NBC Sports Boston last night and talked about why he thinks Bill Belichick and the Panthers are a good match. And I got to say, I don't know that I've ever disagreed with Giardi more than I do right now, Danny.
I think he's going to find when he reconvenes with his football people, and he's overruled those football people a lot, and it's led him to 6 head coaches in 5 years, headed for a 7th. That the franchise is something that nobody really cares about, Tom. And when no one really cares about it, and then you start looking and going, well, we can hire this retread, or we can hire this offensive coordinator. Oh, actually, Ben Johnson doesn't want to come here. He asked out of that last year. Bill Belichick doesn't look too bad. And What does Bill Belichick want? Just write him a big fat check for 3 years. He'll get us some buzz. Maybe he helps set the program back on the right direction. Oh, he's going to get the wins record, we hope, while he's there. Sure, I think it makes a lot of sense. We talked about this last week. I think the more and more I think about it, the more and more Carolina makes a lot of sense to me.
Bill Belichick makes sense for Carolina. Carolina does not make sense for Bill Belichick. Those are two very different things, right? So Giardi might be right that David Tepper wants to make a big splash. He wants to get people reinvigorated in the franchise. He wants stability in the He might want Bill Belichick. If I'm Bill Belichick and if I'm available and if I have an opportunity to go where I want nothing to do with Carolina. Right? That to me is one of the worst jobs in the NFL. Another not so good job is the job that Bill Belichick currently has. But Carolina's not a good job. Look at what Carolina is and has right now. Carolina has an owner that isn't stable, right? From a job perspective, the ownership group in Carolina under David Tepper is not stable. He fires people like it's a bodily function, right? And I'll prove that in a second to you. So I don't want to work for the owner. I have a quarterback in Bryce Young who we think we like, but like in Carolina, we have no talent, or like in New England, rather, we have no talent around him. I'll be honest with you, I can't name one player on the Panthers offense, with the exception of Adam Thielen, outside of Bryce Young. That's how dire it is, right? Patriots don't have household names. Panthers don't have household names. So the same issues that plague Mac in New England are going to plague Carolina and Bryce Young as well. I'm not signing up for that willingly if I'm Bill Belichick. I've got a young, questionable quarterback. I've got no talent around him. I've got an ownership group that, again, has shown no stability and no commitment. And oh, by the way, I don't have my first-round pick. The Carolina Panthers have the first pick in the draft. They don't actually own it because they've traded it to the Bears for the right to draft Bryce Young. That's a terrible job. And if I'm Bill Belichick at 70-plus years old, and I know that I have only a few years left, and I have one last chance to shape and craft my legacy, that is not the place that I want to do it. So I am imploring people, fans, media members, NFL pundits, all of them, just because a job is available, let's not assume that it's a job for Bill Belichick. Somebody will want the Panthers job. Nobody of options will want the Panthers job, and Bill Belichick will have options. It's that simple, right? The college coach just looking to get into the pros might want the Panthers job. The defensive coordinator that takes one interview might want the Panthers job. The special teams coordinator that gets no looks from anywhere else because he hasn't run one side of the ball might want the Panthers job. The fired over multiple times head coach might want the Panthers job. Bill Belichick is not going to need the Panthers job. He's going to have options. If Washington gets rid of Ron Rivera, he'll have an option there. If and when and hopefully Brandon Staley gets let go in L.A., I would think Belichick has an option there. And the Chargers ownership group's going to get a chance to see Belichick firsthand. this weekend in Foxborough. And can you imagine if the Patriots actually beat the Chargers this weekend in the game that Danny's going to, and the Chargers ownership group sees that firsthand and says, you know what, I'd like to just have that guy, and they can Staley and they plan for Belichick in the offseason. There will be other jobs that are open that we're not expecting to be open. Vegas is a better job right now than Carolina is. Vegas at least has Josh Jacobs and at least has Devontae Adams and has Hunter Renfrow, at least for the moment. Right? That's a better job. And I don't know where else will be open. Maybe Seattle will be open. Maybe Seattle gets rid of Pete Carroll. Right? They've faded down the stretch here last year. They were going to fade this year, start out 6-3. They're 6-5 now, and it's about to get a whole lot worse. They're probably going to be 6-8 and have to win their last 3 games to get to the playoffs. Seattle's a better job than Carolina is. Would he want to go back to Cleveland? If they don't make the playoffs, Kevin Stefanski could be out. That would be a better job given what they have talent-wise, Myles Garrett, Amari Cooper, etc. Plenty of better jobs out there than the Carolina Panthers. So don't just fall in love with, a job is open, so Bill Belichick's got to be a fit for it. Nah, the Panthers might be interested in him. He should not be interested in them. I mentioned David Tepper firing coaches like it's a bodily function. I spoke earlier today to Freddie Coleman of ESPN Radio. That interview is going to be put up on our podcast channel shortly. He agrees this is not a good situation.
Yeah, I can't see that. And one reason is the owner, David Tepper, because this is the same gentleman that owns 2 franchises, one in the NFL and one in Major League Soccer. And he has fired 4 coaches in 18 months. If you're Bill Belichick, who values stability as much as any coach in the history of the National Football League, that's not stable going to the Carolina Panthers. And you're not going to make that stable no matter what kind of pedigree you're bringing to the table when it comes to Bill Belichick, because David Tepper has shown, and he tried to put it out there, that he is a patient guy. Really? You fired 4 coaches in 2 different sports in the last 18 months. That's the opposite of patience to me. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I know what patience, the definition of that word is, and that's not David Tepper. So
that's not a guy I want to work for. Right? I mean, heck, look, if the Bills, right, if the Bills don't make the playoffs, what's to say Sean McDermott's not out? And wouldn't Belichick be interested in the Buffalo job? I don't know if they'd be interested in him, but he gets Josh Allen, and he gets to stick it to the Patriots twice a year. He gets to stick it to Robert Kraft for getting rid of him. Don't you think that job would appeal to him? That job is light years better than Carolina. Carolina is like the one job I wouldn't be interested in if I were Belichick. I said weeks ago the Chargers would be my choice. The Chargers would still be my choice. I can see the appeal in Washington, given that he's from that area, given that he loves history and that's a historic franchise. I could see the appeal of that. But the Chargers are the job that I would want. Danny, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens this week in the game that you're at. Like, I am happy you're going. Part of me wishes I was going just so I could observe this firsthand, because look at all that could happen in this game, right? I think Bill Belichick's fate is sealed in New England. I don't think he'll be back. If the Chargers offense goes and does what the Chargers offense can do and wins 42-10, does Robert Kraft say, you know what, we're not even waiting to the offseason, we're going to fire Bill Belichick now? Does he do that? Maybe. If Brandon Staley pulls a Brandon Staley and the Chargers end up 0-for-6 on 4th down or something and gift the Patriots points and the Patriots win that game, is that what causes Brandon Staley to get fired? And then does Chargers ownership look at Bill Belichick and say, you know what? Guy still got something left in the tank. That's the guy we need here. We need a grown-up in this room. Brandon Staley didn't manage this team like a grown-up. And I don't mean that Brandon Staley's immature or has bad locker room culture, but he's playing a little bit too much Madden for me when it comes to my play calling and going forward on 4th down. Maybe they want that stability provided by Belichick. The game you're going to be at is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. So we will see what happens. Text says, I can't name anybody on the Panthers offense other than Thielen. Oh, Chuba Hubbard as well. Yeah, that's right. The Chuba missile crisis. That's what Chris Berman calls them on NFL Primetime. Tex says, I see Belichick doing well in LA with the Chargers. What about him with the Giants because of his connection to ownership? Belichick had a chance to get to the Giants a couple of years ago, right? We were talking about Belichick maybe being traded to the Giants, wanting a piece of ownership, etc. Would he do that to Dable, a guy who used to work for him? Man, I don't know about that. And Dable also worked for Saban, who's Belichick's best friend. I don't know that I see him stepping over him. 2 texts say Belichick wants to win next year. I think he could be with the Chargers. I would watch Buffalo as well. Again, I don't know that they would want him, but he certainly would have every reason to want them. We will get to more Patriot stuff in the 6 o'clock hour, but again, a lot of Celtics conversation coming up in the 6 o'clock hour. And at 6:05, Danny, there is a local story that I know you haven't heard about, right? And if you haven't heard about it, I know a lot of our listeners haven't heard about it. I don't know that it's a big deal, but it's a big deal to me, and I have to rant about it. And you, Danny, can tell me if I'm crazy after the fact, but I have to get this story off my chest. We'll do that at 6:05. Right now, I want to go out to the phone line. I don't want to bring on our guy, Tom Caron, our Red Sox insider over at NESN. The winter meetings are beginning next week in Nashville. TC is going to be there. The Red Sox have yet to do anything on the free agent market. They made a small trade acquiring a reliever from my Mariners. Yeah, we got TC. Danny tells me in my ear that TC is on the phone line now, so we'll ask him all of these questions. So Tom Caron, our Red Sox insider, is with us. TC, thank you for being with us. Hope you are well. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
I had a great Thanksgiving. I'm doing well. How you doing, Brady?
I am doing well as well. Here, you've got a pretty busy night tonight.
Yeah, the tradition at the Garden, the sports museum event we do every year, which is a celebration of New England sports. I'll be emceeing it and doing the interviews. It's always great because we honor some of the greats of all time. They get to bring what we call a presenter, but it's really a friend. And the three of us sit down on stage at the Garden and have a great conversation. We've had some amazing conversations in the past. One that always stands out when I think about it, we had Martina Navratilova and Chris Everett together on stage talking about the pioneering careers they had. But this year, Dennis Eckersley is going to be honored, Doc Rivers, Bob Sweeney from the Bruins, Kevin Falk from the Patriots, Brianna Scurry, the U.S. Olympic goaltender who won a few World Cups, and Dana White, who took down boxing and created UFC. So it's a fun lineup tonight.
I met Brianna Scurry once at the Super Bowl in Minneapolis. I got to look at her one of her goalie gloves from the Olympics, and I'm like, I didn't realize just how massive these things are.
Yeah, and I was a goalkeeper in high school, and kind of I tried to be one at St. Mike's, and we didn't have the big puffy gloves they have now. That might the hamburger helper things might have helped me save a couple more.
Let's talk about the Red Sox. The hot stove is lukewarmly churning around baseball. Aaron Nola has signed. We saw Sonny Gray sign. Cardinals got a couple other kind of mid-tier pitchers, Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. Red Sox have sat out the November portion of the hot stove. Are you worried is the wrong question, but do you find it notable that they haven't done anything yet?
Yeah, because a lot of other teams haven't done anything yet either, right? I mean, it's not like the big names are flying off the board and they're stuck on the sidelines. I can't help but wonder, is Ohtani a log jam? Is Yamamoto a log jam? I feel to an extent the combination of the two are somehow. I mean, Ohtani is a class of his own. We know that. But teams that are in on Ohtani and we've read the reports, right? If anybody finds out you had a meeting with Ohtani, you're no longer in the hunt. He wants this thing shrouded in secrecy. But whoever's in on it, you're talking about $500 million plus. So that's going to definitely impact what else you may or may not do this offseason. So that certainly ties up the resources from those clubs. So I do wonder, if the Montgomerys and the Blake Snells, the real big free agent names, are they going to have to sort of wait it out? I don't know. I've heard both. I've heard some people say no, that they're in, especially Ohtani is in such a class by himself that has no effect on what everybody else is going to do. And then I've heard, because if you're the Dodgers and you're in on Ohtani and you don't get Ohtani, all of a sudden $300 million for Yamamoto or something is going to seem like a bargain, or wherever that goes. So we'll see. The winter meetings obviously start Sunday in Nashville. We'll be down there, and maybe that's where things will get going. Sometimes a trade can, in a strange way, kind of trigger the free agent market. If you have a big unexpected deal, that's when a lot of times that other teams will react to that. So we'll see how it goes. But so far, really quiet. Not worried about the Red Sox because everybody else is quiet too.
What are you hearing about kind of the prices for starting pitching? We've talked about how the Red Sox need a lot of it. I was talking with Buster 2 weeks ago, and I mentioned Lucas Giolito. And in my mind, I was like, Lucas Giolito is a great bounce-back candidate. Maybe you can get him for 1 year and $13 million, and he can restore his value. And Buster's like, we've got him projected at 4 years and $70 million. I'm like, how in the hell is that possible? If this is the prices on starting pitching, I'm like, are you hearing it's going to be this lucrative out there, TC?
Yeah, pitching especially, it always seems to be, and I don't think this is going to be any different. I think the pitching market is going to escalate. I think anything you think you're going to get a deal on, you can add a year and another $15 million on whoever that is. I mean, even in trade, right? If the report's true that the White Sox wanted Brian Bayo for Dylan Cease. I mean, that's crazy, right? And so and that's what happens, I think, in November a lot of times. And then you let things calm down, musical chairs, be a couple guys. If you're looking for the value picks, you're better off waiting till the big names come off the board, because then the value guys are sort of scrambling for their best possible landing spot. And I think that's where the Red Sox will have to pad things out. But it's got to start at the top, as we've been saying all along. You got to land a number one, number two pitcher, and that has to be where the whole thing begins.
Tom Caron, Red Sox insider at NESN, with us here on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. Winter meetings have kind of changed. You know, I think 10 years ago, everything happened at the winter meetings. Now it's a little less happens, but there's still some big things at the winter meetings. Like we saw Xander Bogaerts sign last year, right as the winter meetings were ending. You mentioned the meeting starting this upcoming weekend in Nashville and then into next week. Do you think it's going to be an active winter meetings or more of a ground-laying winter meetings?
I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, everybody I talked to at the GM meeting seemed to believe that groundwork was laid. And, you know, I know the Red Sox had a lot of meetings with a lot of agents and a lot of top free agents. So where does that go? It's really hard to tell. There were years where they went out, the Dombrowski year where they basically, got Sale and Kimbrel and was it Martinez that they signed? The three, he said we need a starter, a closer, and a hitter. He went out and got them all in 4 days, even though the negotiations dragged on a bit. There was a year where they got Carl Crawford and Adrian Gonzalez at the winter meetings. But for every one of those years, there's 3 years where you leave and say, nothing happened. So I don't know, because Breslow's new. We don't know how he thinks. I know the Red Sox, as a business, would love to get an early piece in place so that they can go into the holidays saying, here we go, we're on our way. You hate to just think that things are just going to continue to slowly crawl. But the market dictates all of it. So we'll see.
This is a Patriots question, but I'm asking based on your Red Sox and Bruins experience. I keep hearing people saying, do the Patriots have a plan? Do the Patriots have a plan? And I wonder, well, how can they have a plan? Because they don't know who their head coach is going to be next year. So you can't develop a plan until you know what the organizational hierarchy is going to be. Do you think I'm right in that? You've been around enough of these rebuilds, enough of these turnovers in organizations. How does having a plan get formulated?
Yeah, well, I mean, if Belichick's going to be gone, and we all seem to think he is now, right? It really begins at the GM level, right? Because then you're talking about the draft or whatever you want to call that position now. But the decision maker for the roster, because that's where the rebuild has to begin. It's not the coach. It's the general manager, chief baseball officer, whatever you want to call the guy in charge of your organization. And so they better have that identified. If it's not going to be Belichick making personnel decisions, then I think you're right. I don't think the plan is in place yet. They may have a plan. We know Bob Kraft runs the thing, and I'm sure he's got a plan. But as we've seen with the Red Sox, some people are going to say no when you offer them that position. And I'm not sure being the guy who replaces Belichick is going to be high on a lot of people's lists. If you want to be the guy who replaces the guy who replaced Belichick. I don't, that's why I say they're a long way. And I saw somebody post the other day that they've been around these things for a long time. It's a 5-year rebuild unless you get an overnight, franchise quarterback. But what are the odds you get that? And that process hasn't even begun yet, because the process begins when you put the leadership group in place. They don't have that yet. If it's not going to be Belichick, and I can't imagine, even if you're going to bring him back next year, he's not here the next 5 years. I think we all know that.
I know it's the pros and they're being well compensated and it's not high school and you don't have to worry necessarily about someone's feelings. But I do feel it was coaching malpractice to put Mac out on the field the other day. Not just because Mac's not great and not just because the Patriots don't have a great chance at winning with him, but just mentally, I feel bad watching this kid play football right now. I think he needs a break. I would have liked to see him give it to him. I know they're not obligated to do that, but I do feel bad for him.
Feels like every time Mac Jones goes out on the field right now, we see his confidence further eroded, doesn't it?
Yes.
And I just think I've long believed that you have to be really careful reading into body language on your TV, even if you've got a 70-inch 4K UHD, whatever. Okay, we don't know what's going on inside an athlete's head, so let's forget about body language. Let's look at the throws. The throws are, those two picks are not a confidence quarterback making those throws. It's a guy whose confidence is gone. The pick a couple weeks ago in the end zone or in front of the end zone is just underthrown. He doesn't have the confidence to make the throws right now. Bailey Zappi is way. We know he's not the answer, but he came in the other day. Keep it simple. Go the first year of Tom Brady. Short passes, handoffs, move it up the field. Don't get carried away. That's a better option right now than Mac Jones, because Mac Jones, I've never felt so bad for a multi-millionaire quarterback in my life than I do watching Mac Jones. Every time you go out there and you feel like, they should call timeout. His mom should come out of the crowd and give him a hug and go back into the stands, because it's just, his confidence has been steadily eroded for 3 years and he's a puddle now.
TC, I don't know if you're allowed to answer this, but I read a report on the Red Sox broadcast booth kind of taking shape for 2024. I heard some people asking for a little more Lou Merloni next year and said that maybe that's something that's possible. Are you allowed to give any details on what your teammate situation might look like?
I'm allowed to tell you everything I know. I know nothing.
Okay.
What report did you read? I had a conversation with people yesterday that nothing's been placed yet. So
it all originates.
Reports that everybody believes everyone thinks what they should think. This guy should be in. This guy should not be in. But nothing's been done yet.
The things that I have read, I'm sure, are the things that you have read, that kind of the fill-in guy at NESN, Mike Monaco, is in contention for the White Sox job to replace Jason Benetti. And then, I read something along those lines that people wanted more Lou. That's all.
Sure. People want a lot. People, people want Dennis Eckersley to come back out of retirement. That's not going to happen. I can certainly speak to what people want. People want me sometimes. Sometimes they don't.
We get you in Fort Myers.
I can honestly tell you, I've been around this long enough that, with NESN, you got to get the Bruins off the ground. You got to, we're a month into that. They're up and running now. We're a couple months into it. We're a quarter of the way through the season. And now, you get the holidays, but I would imagine, I know, and this I will not say names, but I know guys are going in and having their meetings and talking about next year now. So it's just really starting to take shape now. The discussions, yesterday I had a call, we had a call about, know anybody new that we want to talk to and see if there's interest out there. And, so that's, we're at the really early stages of putting together next year. Guys have contracts, guys have deals, some are in place, some are up. That all factors into everything. But I can tell you nothing's been decided yet for next year.
Well, on the media nerd hot stove, I'll be watching to see what happens.
Yeah, it's fun because last year was the first year of really the new era of Red Sox broadcast, right? We tragically lost Jerry 2 years ago. Eck retired a year later. And so this past year was the first time, you had you had Lou, you had Will doing a bunch of games. We just lost Tim Wakefield. Mm-hmm. Tragically again. So there's something that'll need to be done there. I thought last year was a transition year. And by the way, I'll say this. I thought Dave O'Brien was phenomenal last year. Yes. He's always been a world-class broadcaster, but I really think Dave came into his own as the voice of the Red Sox last year. I mean, Dave's been, again, he hasn't come in his own. He's done every major event you can imagine, right? But last year, with all the different analysts coming and going for him, I thought he really took control of that broadcast, and I thought it was the best Dave's been with NESN yet, and I really enjoyed listening to him.
I think Dave is awesome. And look, he did it all in the last place finish also, which isn't always easy to do. And he was mesmerizing every time I watched. So as were you, TC. So
yeah.
TC, much appreciated. Have a great week. Enjoy getting to Nashville. We'll catch up with the winter meetings ending next week.
Yeah, we'll talk to you from Nashville, see where things are going. Hopefully get some news by then.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some news by then. So that was TC. He's got off to now the tradition at TD Guard. There's a lot of different things they do media-wise throughout the course of a year. And so this is one of them. It's called the tradition. So TC talking with Doc Rivers and some other Boston sports dignitaries as well. So appreciate TC's time. We'll react to what TC had to say later on in the 6 o'clock hour. But after CBS News, I got to tell you, there is a local story that has me probably far more triggered than it should. I want to see if anybody else is feeling as angry about this as I am. I'll tell you what it is next on DEV.
This is WDEV, Vermont's news station, owned and operated by the Radio Vermont Group. From the top of Sugarbush at 96.1 FM, WDEV Warren and Waitsfield. In Barrie at 96.5. In Montpelier at 98.3. Along with our founding station, AM 550 WDEV Waterbury, Montpelier. Streaming at WDEVradio.com. 92 years of serving Vermont. The friendly pioneer, WDEV.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Stacey Lynn. Hamas released 16 hostages during the pause in fighting today, among them an American. President Biden speaking from Colorado before boarding Air Force One.
Ziad Benin is safe in Egypt. He's crossed the border. I talked with her mother and father. They're very appreciative, and things are moving well. She'll soon be home with her 3 children.
More from CBS's Lilia Luciano.
We spoke with her family earlier, her father and her sister. Her sister traveled from Portland, Oregon. They're eagerly, anxiously awaiting her return, of course, but they say that this reunion that they're expecting will happen tonight will be bittersweet because her husband, Aviv, is still being held hostage.
It is the final day of Israel's ceasefire. Secretary of State Blinken is there now in intense negotiations about possibly extending the truce. If this happens, Mark Regev, a senior advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu, says
we should be receiving a list later tonight and possibly in the early hours of the morning, which will say who is to be released tomorrow. And that means we can know that this process of the pause is bringing back our people and it can continue.
Back in Washington, the House is expected to vote this week whether to oust Congressman George Santos. Speaker Mike Johnson isn't all in.
I personally have real reservations about doing this. I'm concerned about a precedent that may be set for that.
CBS's Skylar Henry reports on a final goodbye to former First Lady Rosalind Carter.
A tearful pastor, Tony Loudon, called her the greatest First Lady.
Our First Lady excelled them all.
The 99-year-old former president also attended, as did the couple's extended family who remembered the Carters' extraordinary marriage.
Dad got used to Mom disagreeing with him because she was really good at it.
Some help for asylum seekers in Chicago.
17 churches are opening their doors to migrants under the Unity Initiative, including Grace and Peace Church, which already offers a food pantry and a resource center filled with donations.
As long as the crisis is there, we're there.
It shouldn't be for anybody. We serve the homeless in Chicago, too.
Allison Keyes, CBS News.
You hungry while flying and hate waiting for the flight attendant to bring you a snack? Well, starting tomorrow, United will offer grab-and-go snack stations so you can get your own. The kiosks will include a limited supply of complimentary water and things like fruit bars and bags of snack mix. Some long JetBlue flights already offer a similar service. They call it the pantry. On Wall Street today, the Dow closed up 13 points. NASDAQ and S&P 500 both down. This is CBS News.
You don't need a job platform, you need a hiring partner. Indeed lets you schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from one place. Start at Indeed.com/credits.
Hi, I'm Matt with Matt Clark's Northern Basement Systems. If you have a wet basement, moldy crawl space, or settling foundation and need an effective solution, we do all things basementing. Basement waterproofing, basement insulation, basement structural repair, and nasty crawl spaces too. Matt Clark's Northern Basement Systems has you covered. We offer free estimates, so for all things basementy, call 855-DRY-TIME or visit northernbasements.com.
The WDEV studio is sponsored by Sticks and Stuff and Swanton Lumber, Vermont and upstate New York's largest independent home center, powered by Marvin Doors and Windows. Go to sticksandstuff.com for store locations and hours.
New England Municipal Resource Center, NEMRIC, a company that recognizes the value of Vermont and all things local, municipalities, businesses, and WDEV.
Just because you're away from your radio or out of our broadcast range doesn't mean you have to miss out. Listen live on the WDEV stream, brought to you by AARP Vermont. WDEV's morning, midday, and afternoon news services, Vermont Viewpoint, and the Brady Farkas Show can all be found on the WDEV stream at WDEVradio.com. Brought to you by AARP Vermont, helping Vermonters protect themselves from identity theft and fraud. More information at aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork.
Rise and shine with WDEV Sunday mornings. Begin the day at 6 with Joel Nasman and 2 hours of classical music, followed by the Takeout with Major Gary. A casual discussion of politics, policy, and pop culture. Then it's Jane Pauley and CBS Sunday Morning with stories about the arts, music, nature, and entertainment. The morning concludes with Sunday Morning Swing Time, an hour of swing tunes. Join us Sunday mornings on WDEV AM and FM and streaming at WDEVradio.com.
Think you know sports better than Brady does? Text in with your thoughts at 802-585-3026.
Now it's back to the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
Welcome back in, Brady Farkas Show right here on WDEV AM and FM and WDEVradio.com. I want to thank TC for stopping by a little while ago. We'll react to what TC had to say coming up here in probably about a half hour or so. I want to get a lot of the 6 o'clock hour dedicated to the Celtics and the in-season tournament, because I actually think there's a lot of stuff to talk about that. And Danny, I want to loop you into the conversation on that as well. Celtics advance out of their Group C, and they'll play in the semifinals coming up next Monday. They're going to take on the Pacers in Indiana. I have to tell you a local story, though, that is really bothering me. And I can hear the listeners now. I can hear my buddy Jack over at NBC5 now saying, oh, it's no fun, Brady, once again, or Brady's overreacting, or Brady's just saying this because he needs something to be mad about. None of that is true. This thing actually infuriates me, and I find it very annoying, and I will tell you what this story is. And you can tell me if I'm overreacting, okay? 802-585-3026. Danny, there is a women's basketball player at Norwich University, right? Division III Norwich University, not that far from us at DEV down in Northfield. Her name is Haley Brewster. And last night she scored her 1,000th career point, right? I think that's an awesome accomplishment. Congratulations to her. She's a junior from Virginia. She's a forward, 5'9". She plays at Norwich University. And what I'm about to say has nothing to do with Haley Brewster. And I think everything to do what I think is a really just bad look for Norwich University women's basketball. And it really just kind of cheapens the culture of the women's basketball program. I don't do a whole lot of talking about D3 hoops. I don't do a whole lot of talking about Norwich University basketball. When we talk about Norwich, we talk about hockey. But this one kind of left me beside myself here. So, Danny, last night, Norwich is playing... they're playing SUNY Delhi, a program that's clearly not very good. And Brewster scores her 1,000th career point in the first quarter. And at the time she scores her 1,000th career point, the score is 26-5, right? Norwich is winning 26-5. And then immediately Norwich stops the game, honors her on court with a small ceremony. It didn't look like it took that long, but they take the ball out of play, I presume, so they can give it to her. They bring the coach out. Coach Zacher gives her the ball. They take a picture at center court. The team is watching. We're halting play in game of a regular season game to honor someone getting their 1,000th point. Let me tell you something. That's not how this is done. And I'm sorry that you're going to tell me I sound not fun and how this is a great accomplishment, that it should be honored and it's no big deal. You know what it feels like to me? It feels like high school. And you know what it shouldn't feel like? High school. You know why it shouldn't feel like high school? Because it's college basketball. What are we doing here? What is this? We're stopping the game, taking the ball out of play, having on-court ceremonies in game. Look, let me tell you something. I know nothing about Haley Brewster other than what I've looked at today. This is not about her. She is the all-time leader in scoring at her high school. All-time leader. She scored over 1,000 points in high school. She's done this before. Okay? She's been there, done that. She scored a lot of points in her career. She doesn't need an on-court ceremony in college. Do what every other program in the country does. Okay? Next game, give her a commemorative ball. Take the picture pregame. Honor her pregame. Let's go play basketball. Okay? She didn't become the leading scorer in Norwich history. She became the 19th player in program history to get 1,000 points. She scored 1,000 points in high school. She's the all-time leader in points scored at her high school. This, to me, is a cheapening of college basketball as far as I'm concerned. And again, I can picture the text line blowing up now. Oh, Brady, let it go, whatever. I'll let it go in about 2 minutes. I will be over this story in about 2 minutes. But when I saw this, I was like, did this really just happen? Okay. Norwich University women's basketball, to my knowledge, hasn't been to the NCAA tournament in a very long time. Someone can quote me on that if I'm wrong. But I can promise you, as someone who worked at Norwich and as someone who has followed the athletic department for the better part of a decade since I worked there, I don't ever remember Norwich University women's basketball being particularly relevant. It's things like this, to me, that show why it's not particularly relevant. Okay? This kind of thing shouldn't be celebrated in this fashion. Okay, I'm not saying to sweep it under the rug and never celebrate, but just celebrate with a small thing before the next game. By making this a bigger deal than it is, you, to me, have set yourself, have lowered your bar as far as I'm concerned. Haley Brewster is a junior. She might hit 2,000 points in her career. Okay, what are we going to do for that? We just going to cancel the rest of the game? We going to cancel the rest of the game and bring out the parents with flowers and everything? Well, I mean, she's going to score several hundred more points this season. Okay. Look, I'm no judge on how Norwich wants to run their offense, but she shot 27 times against Eastern Nazarene in their opener, 31 times, Danny, against Castleton, 28 against Johnson, 24 against Linden, and 22 against Delhi. You thought that Kobe shot a lot in his career. She's going to score several hundred more points a game, apparently being the only person on the or several hundred more points in the season, apparently being the only person who could shoot. It really bothers me when things that should be, I don't want to say routine, but things that should be expectations at college programs get made to be much bigger than they are. You know, another thing that I hate, Danny, in college sports, when teams from the same conference storm the court, right? Like if Georgia Tech beats Duke, I get that's a great win for Georgia Tech, but you're in the ACC. It shouldn't be an outlier that you can beat Duke. It should be an expectation. Georgia Tech has a big budget, has great facilities, has been to a Final Four before, has gotten the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They should be able to play with Duke. It should, when Vermont beats Duke, storm the court all you want, right? It's an uneven playing field. But just because Oklahoma State, who's 7-9 in the Big 12, can beat Kansas, great. They should be able to. You're in the same league. I hate when programs cheapen themselves because it's like they don't think they're good enough that this stuff is so rare. This is college basketball. She has 4 years to score 1,000 points. I think it's more impressive to score 1,000 points in high school than it is in college because usually you only have 2 or 3 years to play. And the games are shorter in high school. I think it's more impressive to score 1,000 points in high school than it is in college. And yes, I scored 0 career points in college basketball. So tough talk coming from me. But like this to me, it just feels like a cheapening of your program. And they had to take the ball, what looked like, I can't promise you they took it out of play for good, but I know in the video that Norwich University went and posted, the head coach went and took the ball immediately and like took it over to the sideline like he was going to give it to her family or something. I'm like, really? We're going to have like this ball is going to get popped in the course of the next 3 quarters of games. You can't get the ball afterwards. We have to stop the game and change out the ball potentially for this. Danny, you can tell me if I'm overreacting. The chances are I probably am,
maybe
but this really bothers me.
I agree. It sounds a little high school to me, but it depends on how long the whole stoppage was, I guess. Like if it's just a quick, acknowledgement and then move on, I'm okay with that.
This is not, you know what I would have been okay with? Like, I've seen people get 1,000 points at UVM multiple times, right? And here's what happens. Person scores 1,000 points. Everybody knows it's 1,000 points, right? The fans get up and clap in the course of play. The guys on the bench are pumped up for it. And then we hit the next media timeout. The guy says, and with that basket, Steph Smith just became the 14th Catamount to score 1,000 points. Congratulations, Steph. And then we play the rest of the game. And then the next game, we do a little thing before where Steph gets a commemorative ball. John Becker takes a picture and we put it on social media and there's an acknowledgement. That's how this goes. Okay, when you act like this is out of body experience, you're just telling me that your program's not that good. And that's really what bothers me. I'm not mad for me. I'm kind of just mad for like the players on the team and the alumni of the program. If we have to celebrate this in game, you're telling me that not a lot of good things happen to your program. And that, I guess that 9 minutes later, that's really the point. That if this thing, which is not incredibly hard to do, again, I'm not disparaging Haley Brewster. 1,000 points is an accomplishment. I would love to have on my resume I was a 1,000-point scorer, or hey, that I had a career ERA under 3 in college. I would love that. I would take pride in that. But this thing that is not overly rare, college athletes get 1,000 points all the time. If it's so overly rare to your program that we have to go to these lengths to celebrate it, you're just telling me that you're not that good. And I am for my university having good athletics departments. I am for my university being a powerhouse, not a team that gets walked all over. And that's kind of what the Norwich University women's basketball team is. A team that kind of gets walked all over. And I'm disappointed in that. And you've just kind of proven to me what kind of program you are when you have to go to these lengths, when you stop the game mid-game like this. I mean, look, I can go look at the Norwich University women's basketball team's records from the last several years, right? 11-14 last year, 7-10 in conference. Let's pull up the year before and tell you what they were. 2021, 2022. They were 10-15, 7-9 in conference. Okay, let me look up the pre-COVID year and tell you what they were. So that's 2019-20. Obviously, the end of the year kind of got truncated there. Maybe not for them at Division III, but 8-18 with a 4-7 record. Like the program isn't that great, and you've kind of just proven why to me in this story. So 802-585-3026. Joe over in Richmond says, I agree 1,000% with you. I understand holding the game up for a second to honor her, but then do the whole ceremony the next day, like you said. Appreciate that. So, Danny, you think I'm overreacting?
Maybe a little. I mean, it depends on how long they stop the game, like I said.
Again, all I saw was a 90-second video that they put out themselves. And they clearly had somebody filming the entire game and clearly had someone editing the video. So it's a nicely done video. It's well done on a production standpoint. So it's not like I watched the video in real time that was all raw. It feels like to do this, it would have had to have been at least 5 to 10 minutes. Now I'm speaking out of turn because I wasn't there, but just on how I know things get going, it feels like 5 to 10 minutes probably, because there is maybe 3 to 7 minutes. But either way, to me, it's too long. To me, you've cheapened your program. as far as I'm concerned. So it just it feels high schoolish. And when you are a good college program, you don't have any hints of high school. When you are a bad college program, you are just high school extended. And that's what Norwich University women's basketball felt like yesterday. And I don't want them to feel like that. No, I don't watch a lot of Norwich women's hoops. I did used to work there. I did used to go to those games. Okay. I do know Coach Zacher. So I do have somewhat of a vested interest in a relationship with the program, at least a little bit. And I don't want them to feel like high school extended. Norwich University men's hockey, women's hockey, they feel like D1 programs. Okay, they are run with that level of discipline and that level of commitment. This wouldn't happen stopping the game for if something in men or women's hockey, right? Someone gets their, 100th career point at Norwich hockey. We would play the game, and we would then get an acknowledgement at the end of period that it happened, and then there would be something before the next game. And this just feels like a cheapening of the program. Again, you can get in on this 802-585-3026. This one has me completely flummoxed earlier today. Tech says probably a program that has not a lot to celebrate. That's the point, right? Like, that's what I'm just saying. If this is what you have to do, then you don't have a lot to celebrate. And I just bore that out with the record. So 802-585-3026. All right, I want to continue to talk basketball here, and I want to talk about the Celtics. So the Celtics beat the Bulls yesterday, 124-97, and it was a really interesting game for a couple of different reasons, right? Celtics were trying to advance. We're trying to win Group C in the in-season tournament. So let's back up for a second and explain the tournament. In the Eastern Conference, there were 3 groups of 5. Okay, so you would play the other 4 teams in your group, and at the end of the tournament, right, the end of your 4-game stretch, the teams from the team that won each pool, each group, was going to advance to the in-season tournament semifinals. There was room for 1 wild card as well. That's how you got 4 teams in there, right? 3 divisions, 4 teams. So the Celtics were 2-1. So was Orlando. In order to pass Orlando, the Celtics needed to finish 3-1, and they had to hit some point differential tiebreaker mechanisms out there, right? Point differential was a part of this. That was the tiebreaker, was point differential. So the Celtics are blowing out the Bulls, but because they need to beat them by 22 points yesterday, they played their starters more than they would have in a blowout. They started fouling Andre Drummond late in the game to get him to miss. It was a very weird scene. So the Celtics ultimately get the win. They advance to the in-season tournament semifinals. They're going to play Indiana in Indiana next Monday. And then next Friday, if they have won that game, they'll play the Eastern Conference final of the in-season tournament. And then I believe it's Sunday, Danny, is the final of the tournament where the Eastern winner would play the Western winner. And then we'd have our tournament. That's how the tournament is set up. We'll get to the point differential thing in a minute. Danny, let me ask you in general. How did you feel about the in-season tournament? It's not over, but the group play portion is over. Now that you've seen it, how did you feel about it?
In general, I thought it was pretty good, but I thought the first couple of games, they played them like regular season games because that's what they were, with different court colors.
Yeah, I liked it yesterday. Okay, and I'm not saying I disliked it before, but I found it hard to follow until yesterday. And you know me, I love watching basketball, but I'm a little more kind of in and out of basketball and hockey at this time of year, right? We got UVM hoops, we got Patriots, we got Red Sox off season. There's a lot of things to follow. I'm following them all, but in terms of watching aggressively, Celtics and Bruins right now, I'm just not there yet, full-time commitment level, right? I'm still in Patriots mode, even as bad as they are. So I had a hard time following the tournament in its early going, right? We were playing 1 game a week. It was like 1 tournament a game a week for 4 weeks. And it's like, I never knew exactly when the tournament was playing. Okay, are the tournament games on Friday? Well, now we got a tournament game on Thursday. I felt it was hard to follow. Yesterday when I knew what was on the line and I knew what needed to happen, I found myself engaged and I found myself invested. So I would sit here and say, I like the idea of the in-season tournament. It does break up the monotony of the regular season. It does give guys something else to play for. But I found it hard to follow early. But once I was kind of locked in, I was locked in. I was interested in if the Celtics would win the game and win by enough points last night, and how would they do it. Golden State and Sacramento was on after the Celtics, and I thought it was pretty fascinating. Okay, the Kings needed to win that game or lose by 11 or less to get into the tournament. Golden State needed to win by 12 or more to get to the tournament. There was this battle of, well, hey, the Warriors were up big, but they couldn't coast because they had to win by 12. The Kings were down big, but they only needed to lose by 11 or less, so could they scratch back in it? And ultimately, the Kings ended up winning. So I did find it compelling, but it took me a little while to kind of get into it, Danny.
Yeah, and it was a little crazy yesterday because it was hinging on another result of another game, too.
Yeah, that's right, because the result of the Celtics was kind of contingent on the Nets game and what needed to happen there. There was something I wrote down, Danny, that I want to grab here because I had a couple of, I don't know if they're ideas, comments, concerns, whatever about the tournament, but I did want to ask you, what, if anything, would you change about the tournament?
Just early on, making it more easy to understand for the fans, because it wasn't clear exactly when they'd be playing, what the rules were, right?
My biggest complaint, I have two things that I would change if I could. One, I think you can. The other, I'm not sure about. Is I would have everybody's fourth game on the same night, right? And I would like to know, I would like as much as possible for the games in the Eastern time zone to all start at the same time, for the games in the Western time zone to all start at the same time. There's a reason why on the last day of the baseball season, every game begins at 3 o'clock Eastern, right? They begin at 3 o'clock Eastern time, or they begin at noon Pacific time. Every game in baseball starts that way. And the reason being is because they don't want teams to know what's happened, and they don't want teams to be able to play accordingly, right? Sit a pitcher here, play a guy there, whatever. Yesterday, we knew the Celtics needed to win that game by 22 points. We knew later in the game that later in the day that the Warriors needed to win by X or Y. If everybody was kind of playing at the same time, we would just get the games and we kind of see where the chips lie at the end of the night. The Celtics had an advantage last night a little bit, didn't they? Knowing what they needed to do. Sacramento, it was not the Celtics, excuse me. It was Sacramento had an advantage at the end of the night. They knew exactly what they needed to do. Golden State knew exactly what they needed to do. And I find that to be mildly unfair, Danny.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I liked, not knowing exactly if the Nets or Raptors are going to win. So keep scoring to see, because you don't know what your point differential was going to be in that instance.
So I would like all of the teams' final games. So all the Eastern Conference games played in the Eastern time zone all start at 7, right? And you got every game going on at once, and no one quite knows what the other team is doing. And we just play. And at the end of the night, we kind of see where it's at. All the Western Conference teams, hey, let's all play at 10 o'clock Eastern, and let's not have what we had last night. So that would be my first one. The other one, Danny, and I don't know if you could do this, I would love for it to feel somewhat like a tournament. It will feel like a tournament moving forward with the semifinal and final, because we'll have the brackets, we'll have the Final Four in Vegas. That will feel like a tournament, and that will be fun. These prelim games didn't really feel like a tournament because they were so spread out, and again, we didn't quite know when they were happening. I would love somehow if we could get group play to involve multiple games in the same city. And it's hard to do because you have 5 teams, not 4. Maybe we can go to 4-team division. I don't know. But it's hard to do that with 30 teams. But I would love for the Celtics were in Group C. One weekend we get Group C all playing in Boston. And the next weekend we get Group C all playing in Philadelphia. And the next weekend we get Group C all playing in Orlando. And I get the Celtics might lose a home game out of that, but you're gaining a chance to see the other teams from Group C play, kind of like an early round of the NCAA tournament where you get multiple games at the same site, and like, hey, here's another chance for Donovan Mitchell to come to Boston this year. Hey, here's another chance for Joel Embiid to come to Boston this year. It would be tough to do. I don't know how you would do it, but I would like to see maybe more of a tournament-like component where you're bringing in, okay, wait, we got the Celtics game at 7, and we got the Cavs and whoever playing at 9:30, and we have a tournament feel in the building.
Maybe a little Vegas Summer League style where they have multiple locations, but they're all in the same city.
I don't know how you could do that, right? Because you're not going to play in Boston, Worcester, Springfield, etc. But
they bring everybody to Vegas for the early games and then bring them back a month later for I don't know.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I don't know that this is logistically possible, but I wish it was more of a tournament feel early. It might help me be aware that it's actually happening. Let's talk about the big story also. You know what? Let's take a break. We'll come back and dive into the point differential. I don't have a problem with point differential being a tiebreaker. Some of the players on the Celtics actually do. Do they have a point? Do I have a point? Let's talk about it next on DEV.
The countdown to 4,000 is on at Lamoille Valley Chevy. Folks, earlier this year, we challenged our teams to sell 4,000 vehicles in 2023, and here's my brother Pat to tell you how we're going to get there. Folks, Dan and I love a goal, and so does our team. To reach our goal, we have instructed the entire Lamoille Valley Chevy team to do whatever it takes to make deals and earn your business. Right now, with Big Chevy year-end rebates, low-interest financing on many models to qualified buyers, and some incredible lease deals, now is the perfect time to get a vehicle at Lamoille Valley Chevy. Come and get your best deal on any new Chevy SUV or light-duty truck in stock and 4 winter snow tires for $1. Pre-owned car, truck, or SUV, no problem. Lamoille Valley Chevy will still include 4 new winter snow tires in your deal for $1. Folks, right now at Lamoille Valley Chevy, our 7-acre lot is covered with over 200 new and pre-owned cars, SUVs, and a ton of Chevy Silverado trucks. So come get a great deal plus 4 snow tires for $1 during the countdown to 4,000. Happening now at Lamoille Valley Chevy, located just past Stowe and Morrisville in the beautiful town of Hyde Park, Vermont.
Hello, my name is Kelly Elwell, nurse practitioner. I oversee Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice's palliative care program, and I am here to help you. Palliative care at CVHHH helps Central Vermonters living with serious or life-limiting illness, such as cancer, lung or heart disease, and dementia, access the care, resources, and emotional support they need. People who receive palliative care services from CVHHH can continue to receive curative treatments such as chemo and radiation therapy. They do not need to be homebound or be a current CVHHH patient. As a palliative care provider, I am here to help you and your family in patient-centered holistic care. I can help you manage your pain and symptoms in coordination with your existing care team, support you to understand and articulate your goals of care, write an advanced care plan, and connect you with the resources you need. It is my goal to help you maintain your independence and experience the highest possible quality of life. Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice is here for you. I would love the opportunity to support you and your family. Please visit cvhhh.org for more information and to schedule a consultation.
It's all over. Deer rifle season, that is, but the biggest buck contest $500 prize from Johnson Woolen Mills continues on. Just correctly guess without going over the weight of the biggest buck registered with Vermont Fish and Wildlife as of December 6th. If you're 18 or older, enter by sending your guess and information to P.O. Box 550, Waterbury. Email WDEV@radiovermont.com or in person at the Johnson Woolen Mills, Main Street, Johnson. It's the biggest buck contest from Johnson Woolen Mills and WDEV.
Local businesses advertise with WDEV because they get results. Brian Bittner of Bittner Antiques shares his experience advertising with WDEV.
We've done a number of recorded ads with WDEV, which have a great response. And we've also been doing live radio call-ins once a week for the past few years. And the response of that has just been amazing.
Interested in advertising on WDEV? Contact us at WDEV@radiovermont.com.
Hi, this is Anson Tebbets, co-host of For the Birds, heard Saturdays on WDEV. Each week, Chip Darmstadt and I discuss bird sightings, bird counts, and activity at your feeder. You also can listen anytime to podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Join us Saturdays at 7:30 and 12:15 for the Birds. 28 years on WDEV AM and FM and streaming at WDEVradio.com.
Your chance to be part of the show is on the text line at 802-585-3026.
Now it's back to the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
Welcome back in, Brady Farkas Show right here on WDEV AM and FM, WDEVradio.com. Texter says, I think the in-season tournament is way too early in the season. It should be in January, not November. I don't know about that. I actually think maybe it's good where it is, Danny. One, best chance at everybody being healthy. Two, I think the NBA knows, like me, we're in football mode. So a way to kind of get us watching basketball, talking about basketball early, and maybe catching our attention early to the point where we will stick or with it longer. Because I think a lot of people think, like, I don't really have to pay attention to the NBA until Christmas Day. Danny, you're a diehard, so you don't feel that way. But, and like, I'm a baseball fan, right? I'll watch baseball from opening day on. I'll watch baseball in spring training. But I think the average fan is like, I don't really need to pick up baseball until June 1st, right? NBA, NHL are winding down. We're getting to the finals of those sports. All right, let me check the standings here after Memorial Day. Basketball is very much like, okay, let me check how things are on Christmas Day. Christmas Day has been basketball's day for a long time.
And then
now.
again after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, I think this is a way maybe to get our attention early and maybe keep our attention longer. So I don't have a problem with where it is. Texter says also, I liked and agreed with everything you said about the in-season tourney. It would be cool if the NBA had pod hubs like New York City and Brooklyn in the East or LA or something in the West. You know what I was thinking? My first thought was, Danny, is it would be cool if the NBA replicated the bubble for the in-season tournament.
Yeah. That's what I meant kind of by the Vegas Summer League.
But it's too hard because you'll lose home game revenue. I guess the only way you could do it is do the bubble. And I don't know. I don't know if could you do this whole thing in 2 weeks, like you do a 2-week bubble, and then all the revenue in that city can come in. You're split amongst the teams. I don't know. It's a money thing for sure. You don't want to lose home games, but I would love seeing little pods also giving it that NCAA tournament feel. Let's talk about the point differential. So I mentioned yesterday, Celtics had to win that game by 22 or whatever. And as a result of that, the Celtics ran up the score on Chicago. And after the game, not everybody was down with doing that. After the game, Drew Holiday said, I don't like the idea of running up the score.
Yeah, running the score. I get the point differential, but it just feels weird. Kind of like you kind of disrespecting the game and your opponent, especially when, obviously they do what they want. They didn't have their starters in, but, it just, like I said, it feels weird, but I also understand it.
Celtics also put their starters back in up 30 with 7 minutes to play. They were intentionally fouling Andre Drummond. I get what Drew Holiday is saying, but I got to tell you, Danny, I don't have a problem with this. And this is surprising for me because usually I'm Mr. Unwritten Rules, I think. Like, I'm very much play the game the right way. Don't show up your opponent. Or you're getting blown out. Don't go and dunk at the end of the game. I don't like that stuff, right? I don't like showing off. I don't like taunting in that sense. But I'm actually fine with this. And the players who are complaining are largely veterans, I think. So I do get where they're coming from. But I didn't have a problem with this. And there's a few reasons why. And let me explain. One, you only had 4 group play games, right? 4 games is where the point differential mattered. So we have 78 games in a season to play it, quote, the right way, right? 78 games to play it the right way. We have 4 in which you have to run up the score, 4 in which you have to play to the end of the whistle. I think we're still good. Like, we're still covered on we're not going to run up the score on our opponent's meter. So that doesn't bother me because it's such a low percentage of the games that are involved playing this way. 2, the opponent knows what's going on too. And when this is an unassuming regular season game in February and the Celtics are beating Washington 110-78, there's no reason there to be running up the score. And Washington's looking to empty their bench, and they're expecting you to do the same. Here, the opponent, Chicago, they know how the tournament works, and they know what's on the line for you. If they choose to pull out their starters and get beat by 50, then they choose to pull out their starters and get beat by 50. If they want to leave their starters in to try to make the game more respectable, then so be it too. But they knew what was on the line. So because they knew, and they knew why you were doing what you were doing, I'm less bothered by it. The third reason I don't have a problem with it, Danny, is we, the fans, we got to see the stars longer, right? We got to see our players play longer. If you are a guy who bought a ticket to the Celtics game and was at TD Garden, you're like, oh man, the Celtics are up 30. Now Tatum's barely going to play in the second half. Oh man, well, that kind of stings. Hey, I spent $90 on this ticket and $40 at parking, and mom and dad bought food for us. This is a $300 day, and Jason Tatum only played 21 minutes. Like, you got to see the starters play longer. And I think that's always a win for the fans, especially your fans at home. To see Jaylen Brown get to play more in the fourth quarter, to see Jason Tatum and Derek White play more in the fourth quarter, I think that's always a win. We spend so much time talking about load management and the guys that aren't playing. This gave an incentive to keep guys on the floor last night, and I was cool with that. As a result, and also, like, I'm thinking about, again, that late game, because I watched a lot of that after the Celtics. Sacramento was down like 23-24 against Golden State. Ordinarily, those starters get pulled, and that game ends up a blowout. Sacramento's like, we need to keep this game close. So they played their starters, and heck, they ultimately came back and won. So their fans got to see their players longer, got to see their stars, more De'Aaron Fox, more Domantas Sabonis, and then because the foot was always on the gas, Sacramento came back and won the game and had what will be their most memorable victory of the regular season, probably. Right? Beating Golden State, the team that vanquished you in the playoffs, and winning against them when you were down by 25 at home. That's going to be the biggest win of the year, I'm sure, for Sacramento. It never would have happened had this just been a regular season game. And finally, Danny, another reason I liked it, how many times last year did we talk about the Celtics letting their foot off the gas? How many times did we talk about them blowing a big lead in the third quarter, fourth quarter, a game getting closer than it had to? Because point differential mattered, didn't you notice the Celtics playing hard to the end of the game?
Urgency.
Something we urge the Celtics to do in regular season games, but they can't always do. They did yesterday. Like, they showed the ability to close. They showed the ability to keep playing hard. I think that's a win as well. I mean, Sacramento didn't give up because the tournament mattered. They won. And Boston didn't give in because the tournament mattered and point differential mattered, and they finished. I got to tell you, the point differential thing, I get where Holiday is coming from. Jason Tatum said something similar the other day. This one, it doesn't really resonate with me, Danny.
I mean, if people don't like the point differential, they have to offer up a better tiebreaker then. Well, if everybody's 3-1 in the group, and also there has to be a different tiebreaker.
Like, don't get beat by 25.
Right.
I mean, it's that simple too. And by the way, I'm no Bulls insider here, but Chicago should not be as bad as they are. They're 5-13, I think, now on the season.
They're a mess.
They've got DeMar DeRozan, who's an all-star. They've got Zach LaVine, who's an all-star. They've got
Vucevic, who's a good player.
Like, they've got Billy Donovan, who's a two-time national championship winning coach, and is coached in the league now for what feels like probably 7-8 years. They have an experienced coach. They are in one of the best markets basketball-wise in the country. They should be able to attract players to go there. And they have a rich NBA history that is now just being completely torn apart. I mean, the Bulls of the 90s, I mean, we are so far removed from that, it's obviously not even funny. And I know the Bulls have made the playoffs, in the last couple of years. I know the Celtics beat the Bulls in the playoffs when Rondo was on the Bulls at the end of his career. And they had the Derrick Rose run where they were good and they got a top seed in the Eastern Conference, and Rose was the MVP. But like, the Bulls are a proud franchise that has just been relegated here to nothing, a laughing stock. And when I think of NBA laughing stocks, I think of, New Orleans. I think of Charlotte, and I think of Orlando, and some of these Johnny-come-lately franchises. The Bulls are not that. The Bulls have a lot of history. They should not be getting beat by 27 and being horrific in the regular season. So, the tournament semifinals, Celtics and Pacers in Indiana. What's interesting, Danny, is that Indiana's turned out to be okay, right? Like, they went 4-0 in this tournament. The Celtics put up like 160 points on them earlier this year, so we'll see what happens when they do it again in Indiana next
Pacers score about 150 points a game and give up about 150 points a game.
So I think that's December 3rd. That's Monday. The other East semifinal is Knicks and Bucks from Milwaukee. The Eastern Conference final will be played Friday night in Las Vegas. And then the West, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head here. I know it's the Lakers and Phoenix, and I know it's Sacramento and
New Orleans, right?
New Orleans. I think you are right about that. Minnesota had a good run in this tournament, but ultimately had a 0-point differential, so they didn't get in. So I think you're right about New Orleans. So, and the other thing that's cool, Danny, also is, I don't know how it's going to work out this year, but I don't think the New Orleans Pelicans are going to go and win the NBA championship this year. For them to be on a spot to maybe win this tournament, I know that people are going to say, it doesn't matter. And it's not. It's true. But at the very least, give your fans something to be excited about this season, right? Like, give them something. Hey, look, here was a month of the season where we were pretty entertained and we saw our team hoist a trophy. I get it. People are going to say, it's pathetic. It's not the title. That's fine if you think that. But Denver's not in this final. Denver may win the NBA championship again, but they're not playing for this. New Orleans might win it. Indiana's probably not playing for the NBA championship, but they got a chance to win this. And I think that's cool, lukewarmly to a fan base. So I think the tournament's been good. I just wish that I knew.
They get bonuses too. Like there was some good jokes out there about Luke Cornett looks like he's playing for his mortgage. Like,
yeah. I saw people complaining, by the way. People were like, the tournament. I hate seeing athletes motivated by money. What do the fans get by seeing so-and-so get another $500,000? Well, ultimately, what do the fans get by seeing their team win an NBA championship? Okay, we get pride, right? That we get pride. So that's, as far as I'm concerned.
And a parade.
Yeah, exactly. You get a parade. So, there's not much. I don't know. That doesn't resonate with me. It's the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM at WDEVradio.com. Text says maybe DeMar DeRozan is a Hall of Famer. Could be.
Pretty close. Right in the line, right?
He's a very good player on a team that shouldn't be as bad as they are. That's for
top
sure.
30 in scoring, I believe, all time.
He's been around for a lot longer, than I think of, right? He's been around for a decade, and it doesn't feel like that long to me. So, all right. Let's step aside. Let's come back. UVM men's basketball taking on Dartmouth today. Tell you a little bit about what we know about the Big Green, and an interesting text from one of our guys on the text line about UVM and Dartmouth. We'll talk about that as we close out the show on the Brady Farkas Show on DEV.
Looking for a place to ignite young imaginations? Inklings Children's Books in Waitsfield. At Inklings, you'll discover a treasure trove of storybooks, from timeless classics to thrilling new adventures, and enchanting weekly story time beneath the beloved Inklings cherry blossom tree. And there's an arts and crafts area where your little ones can explore with paints and modeling clay. There's something special for every child. Visit Inklings Children's Books, 106 Mad River Green, Waitsfield.
If you need wood pellets, Guy's Farm and Yard in Morrisville, Williston, Montpelier, and St. Albans has a full line of them. Wood pellets burn efficiently and clean, and with the high cost of fossil fuels, it's a great alternative for heat. There's no mess like there is with firewood, and the efficiency of wood pellets is unmatched. Buy your wood pellets now at Guy's Farm and Yard, Portland Street, Morrisville, Berry Street, Montpelier, Taft Corners, Williston, and Fairfax Road in St. Albans. Online at guysfarmandyard.com.
We are Vermont State University, moving forward to meet Vermont's career and workforce needs, focusing on one student at a time to solve Vermont's challenges. Vermont State is uniquely positioned to prepare our students to explore the careers that will improve the lives of Vermonters and beyond. Our students are adventurers and innovators, learning the tools to make a positive impact on the world. We're not just another university. We're a community that believes in the power of personalized education, with 5 unique campuses to choose from, affordable in-state learning, small class sizes, and an individualized college experience. Here you will find the tools for a successful future.
Maybe the college you started this fall isn't the best fit, or life got in the way and now you're ready to complete your degree. Come back to Vermont State. We're ready to help you with the transfer process for the spring semester. Find out more at vermontstate.edu.
Experience the difference at Vermont State University. vermontstate.edu.
Celebrate the holidays with your favorite wine, beer, champagne, and spirits from your friends at Stowe Beverage. If you don't know what your best options are, ask Stowe Beverage. They've been helping customers for more than 30 years. The Stowe Beverage staff knows their wines and champagnes. They have the best selection of local and world-famous brews. Happy holidays from Lisa, Bob, Dennis, Chris, Jerry, Anna, and Mike at Stowe Beverage at the Gale Farm Center on the Mountain Road in Stowe.
Vermonters know they can depend on WDEV day to day and in times of crisis. Paul Costello expresses his thoughts on the importance of WDEV.
WDEV, you guys stand for something, and you're like the heart and soul of community radio, and I love that, but, you really all have stepped up in such a great way.
WDEV, in service to the community for 92 years. FM 96.1 and AM 550. Streaming at WDEVradio.com.
Make your opinion heard by texting onto the Brady Farkas Show at 802-585-3026.
Now it's back to the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
Texter says DeRozan is the 35th scorer all time in NBA history and climbing. So definitely a great.
I said top 30.
Sure.
Large error.
You did. You were close, but you're Mr. NBA. So, you got to know those things.
Got to memorize the top 100. I know.
You're Mr. Basketball. We're calling you Danny Hoops, Danny Hoops. UVM, speaking of hoops, taking on Dartmouth tonight over at Patrick Gym. I'm going to watch this game. I'm going to listen to this game on my way home as well. I hate when we call this game the Twin State rivalry. I hate when we do. It's not a rivalry, right? These teams are not in the same conference. UVM wins it every year. I expect UVM to win this game by at least 15 points this year, and frankly, I'd like to see them win it by 20. I don't know if they will. That's a hard ask, but I think UVM wins this game by at least 15 points. They certainly should win this game by at least 15 points. UVM's won 14 consecutive games against Dartmouth. It's somewhere like 31 of the last 32 or 30 of the last 32, something like that. I mean, Dartmouth never wins this game. Dartmouth's 1-3 right now. They're not as good as UVM, who's 5-2. So I hate when we call this the Twin State rivalry. They are a rivalry solely out of proximity and solely because they play each other every single year, and they've played over 100 times. Jack says, I've been calling, Jack is our guy from NBC5. He says, I've been calling it the 89 series on television. I like that. It's not a rivalry. It's not a rivalry until Dartmouth proves they can win. And then, oh, by the way, can they win somewhat, I don't want to say routinely, but can they win with any kind of regularity? And I don't think they can, right? Dartmouth is just not as invested in basketball as UVM is. They're just not as good. I want to address this text. Text says, UVM is only rivals with Dartmouth because of proximity and history, and that's true. But then the text goes on to say that UVM's true rival is Maine. Huh? UVM's true rival is Maine? Well, that's not true either. Maine's been garbage for a long time also. Every year that I've worked it and covered UVM practically, UVM and Maine have played in the first round of the America East tournament. You know what? UVM's been the 1 seed and Maine has been the 8. You're not a rivalry if you're that bad either. Now, Maine is going to be better this year. They might be top 5. They have some good pieces. So we might actually see a Maine team that can compete with UVM this year, but that doesn't make it rivals. Let me explain how this goes for you, and I've said this for a long time. There are a handful of true traditional rivalries, right? Ohio State, Michigan, North Carolina, Duke, etc. By and large, rivalries, even in college and certainly in the pros, are very, very fluid. Okay, the rivalries are who is good at that time. It's that simple, right? Danny, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been covering UVM for 8 years. Okay, the first 3 years, they were rivals with Albany. Will Brown was a thorn in their side. They'd lost in Albany in multiple America East tournaments. Albany and Will Brown had come up here and beaten them. So then Will Brown leaves, and Albany's not very good. Oh, and then, hey, Stony Brook's in their place. And they've got Carson Purifoy, and they've got another guard who was real good. And Steve Peichel's their head coach before he went to Rutgers. And it's like, okay, well, now Stony Brook's the rival because Albany's not any good anymore. And now the rivalry is Vermont and UMass Lowell, or Vermont and Bryant, because Bryant came in with all its talk last year and about how good they were going to be, and they had a controversial head coach in Jared Grasso who's not there anymore. So the rivalries change every year depending on who is good and who is bad. And I say the same thing about professional sports. Everybody wants to tell me that this Lakers-Celtics rivalry is so great. I don't buy it anymore, Danny. They barely play each other. They're in different conferences. I can sit here and say the Celtics are rivals with the Knicks. I can sit here and say, well, hey, one year they're rivals with New York, and one year they're rivals with Milwaukee, and the next year they're rivals with Philly. And then, heck, if Washington and Orlando got good, they can be rivals with them. But I just feel like these rivalries are so fluid that to tell me that UVM's longtime rival is Maine, that's a laughable offense as far as I'm concerned.
I feel like it was UMBC for 5 minutes.
That's true, too. I forgot about the UMBC years, right? UMBC beats Vermont. Jairus Lyles hits a 3 at the buzzer. The next year, though, Lyles is gone. They've got a lot of the same pieces back, and UVM was rivals with them. And Ryan Odom, who is the coach at UMBC, had beaten John Becker a handful of times. So we went from, in the 8 years I've been here, we've gone from Albany to Stony Brook to UMBC to now Stony Brook's out of the conference entirely. Odom is gone. Peichel is gone. And now we're looking at UMass Lowell and Pat Duquette's team, and we're looking at Bryant. I mean, it's that simple. The rivalries change, right? There are long-standing rivalries, right? Washington State, UCLA, USC. But generally, it's just which team is good and which team is in my way this year. That's how I've thought. Do you consider Celtics-Lakers a huge rivalry?
No, not as huge as it was.
It was huge as it was because there were less teams. They played each other more often. They were in the finals every year. And oh, by the way, at the pro level, and now maybe even the college level too, free agency and the transfer portal have kind of changed things. Like Celtics, Lakers in the 80s, those guys played for the Celtics and the Lakers. Now there's so much cross-contamination where guys could play for the Celtics one year and play for the Lakers the next. Like, you never would have had that, right? Guys are not in places long enough to build up hate anymore.
I think even in 08, 09, it was pretty strong because they played each other back-to-back years in the finals.
Yeah, and that's true, but the Cavs and Warriors were rivals for a while. Do you think the Cavs and Warriors are rivals now?
No.
Exactly.
No. That was just 5 straight years of mostly Warriors dominance.
Right. So, look, I'm a Seahawks fan, right? Diehard Seahawks fan. I could sit here and tell you that for a while I thought the Cardinals were the Seahawks rival. Then I thought it was the Rams, and then I thought it was the 49ers because those are the teams that are in their way at that moment. Look at the Patriots, right? The Patriots fans hated the Jets because the Jets were good. Now Patriots fans hate Buffalo because Buffalo's good. Maybe I don't think Miami elicits as much hate, but
it was just Ryan Fitzpatrick.
It was just Rex Ryan, really.
Right.
It was the Rex Ryan hate for a long time. So, Peter says, Danny, great job on a recall of UMBC. Well, that's why Danny's here, right? Danny's a valued member of the team. So, a lot of good stuff on this show today. I want to thank TC for stopping by. I want to thank Freddie Coleman, who I spoke to earlier today. Freddie Coleman over at ESPN Radio. That interview available on our podcast channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and WDEVradio.com. Buster Olney of ESPN is going to stop by tomorrow. We got some breaking news out of baseball. Former Yankees pitcher Luis Severino is about to sign with the New York Mets. So that's one kind of bounce back candidate off the market there for the Red Sox. So another guy gone here for Craig Breslow and Alex Cora and company. So we'll talk to Buster tomorrow. UVM and Dartmouth just minutes away at Patrick Gym. Can't wait to listen to that on my way home and then watch it subsequently later. I'll see you tomorrow on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM and FM, streaming always at WDEVradio.com.